And so Daniel comes on the scene and he gets on his knees and he says, God, we're in trouble. I don't have the learning. I don't have the knowledge. I don't have the books. Only you are able to tell me what the dream was. And God reveals it to him. It's a tough dream to talk to about Nebuchadnezzar. He goes and looks at Nebuchadnezzar and says, I want to tell you something. That which I'm about to tell you has nothing to do with my learning. It has nothing to do with my education. It has nothing to do with my intellect. It has everything to do with God's wisdom. And now I will unfold to you your dream. You can only learn so much from books. You can only learn so much from education. Ultimately, that which will carry you through will be the wisdom of God in the toughest situations of life. I remember a few years ago, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, George Carey, asked 5 of us men to go with him to meet with the Israeli and the Palestinian leaders to try and bring them together. We'd worked hard for several days. We were exhausted. And that afternoon, they'd gone to see Yasser Arafat. I backed out of that. I just didn't feel it was right. I felt we were going to be used by him. As it turned out, it was right. That's on an aside. The last one we met with was Sheikh Talal, one of the 4 founders of Hamas. And he was a powerfully built man. Room filled with them puffing tobacco and so on. Served us a great meal. He'd spent 18 years in prison. He'd lost some of his children as suicide bombers. Archbishop Carey led in the talk, bringing him to a point, and then it was getting close to leaving time. He gave each one of us 5 men a chance to ask him one question. I asked him mine. I won't tell you what it was. It was a very private setting. But I didn't like his answer. Finally looked at him, I said, Sheikh Talal, you and I may never meet again. But I don't like your answer, sir, and I want to tell you something. So not far from where you and I are sitting, there's a mountain. 5,000 years ago, a man by the name of Abraham climbed up that mountain to offer his son as a sacrifice. Remember that? He said, yes. I said, let's not argue about which son it was. Let's just agree it was his son. He said, yes. I said, Abraham takes this boy up, and the axe is about to come down, and God stops that harm. He says, that's right. I said, what did God say? And he just stared at me. I said, you know what God said? God said, stop. I, myself, will provide. He said, that's right. I said, very close to where you and I are sitting, Sheikh Talal, 2,000 years ago, God kept that promise. And he took his own son up that hill. And this time the axe did not stop. He just kept staring at me. I said, Sheikh, until you and I receive the son God has provided for you and me, we will be offering our own sons and daughters on the battlefields of this world for position, power, land, and prestige. There was such an obvious silence in the room. And the Archbishop said, I think it's time for us to go. I said, brother, I've blown it. I was walking up towards the stairs where we were to head down. And the Archbishop came around me and put his arm around me. And he said, Ravi, that was of God. I said, I sure hope so. I said, I want to tell you something, sir. I'd never thought of that before. It just happened now. He said, it was right. We walked down, and Sheikh Talal is coming at the back, and he runs to get the Archbishop into the car because he was the guest of honor, and then he runs over towards me. I thought, that's it. I'm going to be buried in Ramallah now. He comes over and turns me around. And he looks at me and he said, first patted me on both sides of the face. He said, Mr. Zacriahs, you're a good man. I hope I will see you again someday. And he wipes the tear off, opens the car door, after giving me a big hug, a kiss on both sides of the face, and helps me in. I don't know if I'll ever see him again. But I do know this much, that in that fraction of a moment, God gave me the privilege with His wisdom to share the story of the cross.